Hello again, and as I said, thank you for joining us. We're very excited to be launching our new purchases module today with you. Jeff is going to walk you through that very shortly, but just before we begin, I'll let you know that if you have any questions about the module, just throw them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll tackle them as we go, or we'll get to them at the end of the session. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Jeff.
Thanks so much, Tara. Looking forward to taking everyone through this exciting new purchases module. We've been working really hard on this one in the background for a while. We've actually had it in beta for the last 2 months. So for some of our users, this will kind of be a bit of old news, which is okay. Thank you to our beta users for giving this new module a workout and giving us your feedback. As Tara said, we're launching the new purchases module today, and we're really excited to be bringing this to you because it really represents I guess, a sort of finalization and mirror image, if you will, of the work that we did about this time last year on our invoices module upgrade. So let's get stuck into it. In terms of our agenda for today, we'll kick off with a bit of an introduction and setting some context of what this purchases module is all about and why it's so important. We'll then move into the details of the upgrade. And it's worth highlighting here what is actually in this upgrade, because what we're going to do in this demo today is really take you through the experience of using the purchases module in a way that is all live, almost no slides in this. So we're going to follow a process that's maybe not quite the same as you would do on a day-to-day basis, just because we need to cover a fair bit of ground. But it's worth commenting at a high level that this upgrade is really about 4 different things that you're able to do with Accelo going forward. And for anyone who's curious, every Accelo account that has the ability to use projects, tickets, or retainers, both Plus and Premium, will get this new module. So in terms of what's in this upgrade, there's really 4 things. There's the ability to create purchases, and that's the ability to track not just the selling of things, which is your invoices, but also the purchasing of those things as well. It also includes the ability for you to create and configure purchase templates. These templates are a way for you to save time in being able to send purchases through to common vendors, as well as having particular layouts and the control that you're probably familiar with if you've been playing with our invoice templates. We've applied the same principles with a little bit more sizzle to the purchases area. We've also got the ability with this new upgrade, this new module, to be able to send purchase orders out to folks. So the power of this is that you can actually use Accelo's magic when it comes to email tracking and conversations to be able to track all of your vendor communication. So when you're on a project, you can create a purchase order, have it generate a PDF file that's laid out exactly the way you want, and then send that on through to your clients, or sorry, to your vendors in this case. I'm so used to saying clients, to your vendors, and any questions they have, any delivery information, all of that will be able to be tracked against the project or ticket or retainer that you're actually creating that purchase from. And also, very importantly, the ability to take this purchase information and push it across to either Xero or QuickBooks Online. In the demo today, we're going to be using Xero, just because you've got to choose one when you're doing this sort of integration stuff. But it also works with QuickBooks Online for those folks. We also have a bonus sneak peek to show you. And then finally, we'll wrap things up with some Q&A. As Tara mentioned, if you do have questions, feel free to throw them into the chat area or the Q&A box as we go. We do have it open here on the screen. So if we can answer those questions as we progress without it being too distracting to the demo, we'll do that. But if we can't get to them or the timing isn't quite right, we'll be sure to field them all towards the end of the session. All right, let's get going. So in terms of context, it's really important, I guess, to reflect that Accelo's really always had this bias towards revenue. And the reason for that is Accelo's really built predominantly for professional service businesses. And the nature of a professional service business is that most of the costs that go into doing what you do are the time of your staff members, the time of your people. And the reality of that situation is that your team members' costs are important to keep track of in timesheets, but the actual way that those costs appear in your accounting system and on your income statement is as a bucket of time in overhead that's spent through payroll, whether it's a casual basis or a full-time basis. That, you know, the time that someone clocks in and clocks out, even if it's on a wage or a casual basis, is still, how long they're on the job, not necessarily how long they worked on task X or task Y. And so because of this time focus, where time is the cost and it's generally captured as a general overhead, along with things like electricity and rent. Like, you can't necessarily point to a corner of your office and go, okay, the corner of the office, that's where we worked on project X this month. Because of that, we have focused Accelo in the past on the income side of things, on the revenue or invoicing side that's represented there in the green box on the right-hand side. And while businesses in professional services absolutely have materials and expenses, and those are quite important, they tend to be less volatile. And so we haven't been quite as focused in the past on being able to turn those things into purchases from a vendor and synchronize them with your accounting system. Now, after we rolled out the invoicing module last year, we looked at what our next priority in the financials land was. And while we worked on a bunch of other stuff, big improvements to the projects module, etc., our engineering team needed a little bit of time away from invoice and payment related things. Otherwise, they were going to go crazy. We looked at the next priority when it came to these areas of financials, and we realized that while tracking materials and expenses is good, it's just not good enough. It's not good enough to just go to the project Insights tab, one of the new things we worked on earlier this year, and show you profitability. We really need to be able to take those costs, those materials and those expenses, and we need to be able to group them together and purchase them from a vendor so that we can then see them appear in your accounting system. And so the key to this was to have this mirror image for invoices, which is really a purchase represented in the red square down the bottom. And so while we use the same customer or contact database, represented in blue, that client or vendor record, it still lives inside Accelo in the same place. So you could quite plausibly have someone who acts as a vendor for you in your business when you're working on client projects, who's also a customer when you do work for them in a different context. The work that you do, those invoices being the way that you get your revenue, and the purchases, which is the way you track your costs or expenses, are now going to be supported as true mirror images of each other. And we actually now represent them together in a common billing tab whenever you're looking at a project or a ticket or a retainer. In addition to being able to create a purchase and send it off to a vendor, we also have the ability to synchronize that information directly into Xero and QuickBooks in much the same way that we have for invoices. We've also got the ability to track that for your expenses. So the purchases module really has three objectives. The first one is to easily bundle these costs from both materials and expenses into a purchase. Identify who the vendor of that purchase is, which is really important for accounting systems as well as your own sanity. And then being able to have each of the different materials and expenses that you have register as an item on that particular purchase. We also want to push that purchase across to your accounting system. And the key benefit to this is you can then represent it or see it as either a bill or an expense. The different accounting system uses different words. But we want to drop it into your accounting system so that at any given time, after, let's say, a project manager has created the purchase and said, yep, we're ready to buy these materials, or yep, I'm processing the expenses our team put through and I'm allocating them to the appropriate vendor. As soon as that's being done inside of Accelo, within a minute or two, you'll see that appear in your accounting system automatically. And what's great about that is anyone who's using their QuickBooks or Xero account to run their income statements doesn't have to wait until an accountant's gone through and done like a monthly expense entry. That information will flow straight through into those products, and so you'll be able to see what your income and expenses look like and what your profitability looks like from an accounting perspective, almost in real time. There's also the third piece, which is the optional ability to create a purchase order, this PDF file that you can then send off to the vendor. And that, as mentioned previously, has the big benefit of them being tied in with Accelo's activities, attachments, email tracking, and all the other magic. So if you've got an expense, let's say you're an audiovisual company. We've got some clients that do a great job setting up fancy video conferencing systems. And you've got a whole bunch of Samsung TVs and a whole bunch of microphone systems and cameras, and all of that gets stitched together. When you engage in, say, a 50K rollout project for a client, you can then actually, have 30K of that, which represents potentially all of your your actual materials, not just be something you invoice your client for, but then that 30K worth of materials could actually turn out to be 15 or 20K worth of materials that you actually put through as a purchase order to your AV vendor, AV vendor. And if the AV vendor applies and says, oh, okay, well, here's our, we can't ship that until Tuesday, or any of the other details that you need to have, the backwards and forwards of discussing shipping details, delivery information, back orders, all of that will then be tracked and accessible inside of Accelo under the stream for that particular project. So your team can have full visibility of what the heck's going on without having to constantly go over and harass somebody in purchasing or harass somebody in the accounting department. So you can actually have that visibility all brought to life. Now, as mentioned, we've been beta testing this for about 2 months. We actually, when we set out a sneak peek about 2 months ago and asked for beta test users, we had the hope of being able to get this bad boy live for you all in the middle to later part of July. We actually got really, really close. However, we got a little bit too close to the end of July. And there's nothing worse than making changes to billing, invoicing, anything that touches QuickBooks and Xero at that real kind of like horrible part of the month, being the end or the beginning of the month, when a lot of folks are doing the end of month billing. So today being right in the middle of the month of August, this is the right time for us to be getting this live for you all. If you've got questions, if you come across bugs, if there are differences to how you do things that we haven't taken into account, we'd love to hear from you as you're using this module by emailing support@accelo.com, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. If you can include screenshots, links, anything that helps our success team. This isn't just a new module for the product, it's also a new module for us and the team. Anything you can provide there that helps us to help you as quickly as we can would be really appreciated. So that's all of the background. Without any further ado, let's jump into the demo. Okay, so we're going to do something a little different. Normally we start our demos in Accelo because after all, that's what we do and that's why you're here. But I thought we might do something a little bit different. What we're actually going to do is we're going to set up an example, a bit like what I talked about, where we're doing a setup for, in this case, we'll make it like a computer lab because everyone knows about computers and keyboards and mice. And let's just imagine that computer lab also has a smart whiteboard in it. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting off in Xero, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new item. So under the inventory system in Xero, you've got the ability to create these new items. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this one a smart whiteboard. I'm going to give it a code like smart whiteboard 01 and smart whiteboard 01 with all the typos that come from typing on a side angle here as I'm doing the demo for you. And let's say this smart whiteboard, you know what? It's been a long time since I priced a smart whiteboard. So let's just say they're kind of fancy and you buy them for $2,000 and that goes in your cost of goods sold. And let's say that there's a tax on that purchase. And then on the price side of things, let's say you sell them, let's say they're a nice profit margin here. We're going to sell them for $4,500 and that's going to go into the sales category with regular sales tax on it. So what we're using here, just so you can probably see it across the top, we're using a demo account for Xero, which means it's kind of populated with a whole bunch of extra stuff in it. But I've just added my smart whiteboard here, the SWB01 for my price point and the details attached to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in here to Accelo and I'm going to go to my configuration page. And in here, I'm going to go through, actually, I went to the wrong place. That's where I'm going to come in a minute. Sorry, it's been a long day, even though it's probably in the morning for most of you. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import the product and service list from Xero. The reason for making Accelo live downstream of this product and service list is in Xero, that's where you're able to import a list of products, define the income and expense codes that they represent, and the tax code details. And then we pull that information in automatically. Well, not quite automatically. When you hit the import button, we pull that information in, and then we'll make that appear as part of, under our configuration area here, the list of materials and services. So I'll come into my material list here, and let's see if it's shown up yet. Smart whiteboard, have you arrived as yet? not just yet actually, but I've got a couple that I created a little while earlier here, which we'll use in a minute. So I'll open those up to show you. We've got our Logitech keyboard here. So we can see that we've got our K350 keyboard. We can see that we sell them for 95 bucks and we purchase them for 65 bucks. And all of this information I'm showing you here, the sales account, the cost of goods sold, all of that stuff has come in from Xero. So that's all been provided there for us to work with. And I've also got, for example, the Lenovo Yoga laptop here. So I might actually, I'll put Lenovo on the front of that. So you can actually give the descriptions of your materials extra information. You can decorate them and make them more interesting because this is the sort of thing that's going to appear on your quotes and in your project plans. But it's still tied back, it's still linked back universally to that information that's inside of Xero. Let's just give it a quick refresh and see if Xero's pulled in our smart keyboard, smart whiteboard yet. No, not as yet. That's all right. Might be a little bit backed up. It's normally pretty quick, but could be a few minutes. I'm sure by the time we get in and do a few more things, it'll be there. So let's do an example together now, and let's go in and create for this, this sample customer here. Completely made up, Paws on Puppies Co. Let's go through here and create a new project for this client. So I'll come through and we're actually going to quickly rattle through the process of creating a project. So let's call it class, typos again, classroom tech refresh. And I'm going to come in here and say it's a default project and just kind of go with the basics here. And for this classroom tech refresh, we've got effectively a requirements phase where, sorry, typos everywhere because I'm a bad typist sometimes. So we've got requirements, implementation. So that's where we'll be installing this gear. And then we'll have some, initial go live and support. So these folks, when they show up for their first day back at school, have some help from us, nice and handy. And let's say we're going to do the implementation over a long weekend. And so what I can do now is I can come in here and look at, I'll actually do them one at a time. So I'll start with my requirements guy here. I'll give it a budget and say, okay, well, this particular guy, we're going to make this, a service category here. These could be whatever you want them to be. I didn't actually get those sort of configured in Xero, so this is coming through pretty ugly. So let's say we're going to spend 15 hours on getting our requirements down pat. And then I'm going to come in here with the implementation phase, and I'm going to add in, again, I'll choose a ghetto kind of basic service item here and price, and choose that I'm going to spend, the team's going to spend quite a lot of time getting everything set up, 40 hours there. And then we'll also come in and have our go live and support, and the team's going to spend a bunch of time there. Again, just put some basics in here. And let's say that you're going to spend 10 hours lurking around and being helpful. And so now I've got myself a project plan, which has my $13,000 budget for the project, but we haven't got any hardware yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and add my materials. We're doing a refresh. Now, of course, what you can also do is modify what the, you can add these materials after the fact. So in the real world, you probably actually start off with your overall project scope, excluding your materials, and then as you do your requirements, you'd work out what folks need. So let's come in here, for example, and look at our items. So the first one we're going to have is we're going to include a bunch of laptops. So we're going to say, all right, we're going to have 20 of these laptops that come in as part of our implementation. And then we're going to also put in some keyboards. So let's put the keyboards in there, and we'll have 20 keyboards. And we'll also come through and have 20 mice. Actually, I've spelled out mouse over here, so it'll find it accordingly. So it'll be 20 of those as well. And I'll just have a quick look, see whether I've been able to import my smart whiteboard yet. Have you come in? Smart whiteboard, there it is. You're seeing it live, everyone. Let's say there's 2 of those in the classroom, one for the front and one for the back. All right, so I've now got 33K, almost 34K worth of things that I'm buying from a vendor. And I've also got 50K worth of revenue that's attached to that. And that goes on top of the $13,000 worth of services that I'm charging the customer here. So the total project scope is 63K. So I'm just going to go through and set that up. Most of the time you'd be pulling the stuff out of templates and adding the specific materials. So that's how it should work. All right, so now what we can see is we've got our overall project plan here, and we've got our materials. We can see what our materials are. And what I wanted to show you now is, in addition to what you're probably familiar with around creating an invoice where you could invoice the customer for this work, you can now actually go through and create a purchase. So let's do that together. Now, when you're creating a purchase, you're able to use a purchase template. And the purchase template here, you can have as many of those as you like. There's no limit. And when you define the template, you can optionally define who you want the vendor to be. So this could be, you know, Ingram Micro or some other distributor of hardware, where you've got the company name and you've also got a contact. And look, if it's someone like Amazon or other details, you're able to totally, you know, sort of have the contact of probably someone like accounts payable or something like that, even though you probably wouldn't send Amazon a purchase order. I don't think they pay that much attention to you. And then you can have your default title here. So in this case, I'll make the title classroom fit out for pause is the name of the customer. And you might not want to tell the vendor who that is. You can put some internal notes in here. So this is just notes that only you and the team get to see. Need to have delivered soon. Sorry about the fact it's a bit cut off there. It's one of the last little polish things the team need to work out today. You can have notes to the vendor included as well. And what you can do is you can then go through and you can either add materials and expenses that exist on the project, or, as the question was actually just asked in the Q&A area, can we add materials on the fly? So you can actually come in here and add materials directly that you wish to add. Now, one thing that we don't do at the moment is we don't create the materials inside of Xero automatically. It's something that we could look at doing in the future. But because Xero is that sort of accounting source of truth and is really your price list type area, we're not creating those at the moment. But you can, of course, go through and, in addition to, you know, having another smart whiteboard, for example, you can come through and you know, have some whatever else is in your price list and your service offering there. And you can just put that information in. And if you add that on the fly, then what that will do is it'll automatically make that material part of your project scope. I'm not going to do that now, though. I'm actually going to come through and invoice, or in this case, purchase. I keep using that word incorrectly. The various purchase items that I've got here for this client. So I can see, okay, I've got my Ultrabook and it's pulled across the ledger and tax code details that Xero has identified. And I've also got optionally shipping information, which I can hide and not use if it's not relevant. And I can then go through and look at what I want my PDF file to look like. So I'll have a look at that quickly here. So cool, this looks good, that's all fine. Oh, look, the template normally has me showing the tax and stuff, but you know what, I don't want to bother this time. I just want to show them the quantity, the rate, and the details of what's included there. All of the stuff we're looking at, the layout here, I'll show you in a minute how you're able to edit the template so that represents what you want to show on your template. And then I can save and close that, and then save and send the PDF and have that bad boy get sent off. And that'll go out to the client, or that will then give me the option to send that out to the client. And while that's loading away in the background, let's go and have a look at the templates area. So what I'm going to do is go into the configuration zone here. And I'm going to come through and look at the templates and how we're able to configure those. So it's under the billing and rates area. There's a purchase template list. And whereas on invoices, the templates are probably going to be mostly about, you know, the types of services that you offer and maybe some, you know, a template for different payment terms. In this case, we expect that a lot of our users are going to do things like create a template for some of their most common vendors, because it's by setting the template, that's where you're able to identify who your vendor is. You're also able to put some default notes in place, default payment terms. So in the case of Google, they're just going to, you know, take it out of your credit card pretty quickly. You're able to identify whether you want to show some of the advanced information on the purchase creation, whether you want to create the purchase order PDF or not. All of that sort of stuff is able to be configured, default shipping addresses. And then down here, this is where you're able to put in your purchase order options. So you've got your notes and your body and all this sort of information, including a whole lot of merge fields that you can just drag and drop into the interface. And that'll copy, to your clipboard. And then you can just paste it in down here and see that appear. The other thing you can do is completely customize the way your PDF looks. So let's say, for example, you don't care about, including the word total here. You can just select it and remove it. If you want to put some extra text in place, payment terms are strictly this or whatever else is relevant, you can again customize all of that information there and see, things to look however you want them to be. So there's lots of customizability there, which is pretty awesome. All right, so let's go and have a quick look here at our project. And what I want to show you that's different with this new module going live is we used to have a section here for the invoices only. Now we have billing and invoices. So I can see that we've got a classroom tech refresh here, and I can see that we've got a purchase here that shows that it's got 14 days until it's due. That's not paid yet, and that's $36,000 worth of purchase. And I can click in here by clicking on the title. It'll take me in to look at the purchase. It tells me that the purchase is to Happy Clients Company, obviously an arbitrary made-up name. And I can see that I've got the details of this purchase. I can then actually click in here and see the PDF file. Thank you, Acrobat. So I can come through and see this is exactly what the PDF file is. I could send this on as an attachment, as an activity to the vendor if I wish to. But in this case, what I'm going to want to do is I want to come back into Xero and show you how it looks. So I look at my purchases area, and I've got the purchases we push across go into the bills area here, and I can now see what's here. Again, this is demo accounts. There's a bunch of noise going on in here. And I've got my 30 odd K bill that we just created. Actually, it's a slightly different one. Where's that one? Maybe it hasn't pushed across yet. Oh no, this one here. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong row. So this is the one with our whiteboard. It's how you know we just did it live. You saw it get created. So here I can go through, see that the purchase hasn't been paid for yet. And then when your team is ready to send off the payment for that invoice, you can go through here and put the payment details in. And after you've done that, we'll push that information back into Accelo so that, let's say you're the project manager who's screaming for this hardware to be delivered and the person on the other end saying, we haven't been paid yet, we can't send it. You can look at it and go, no, you have been paid. It was paid on this date with, this reference and check number type information. So you can really, sort of chase that detail down without having to bother the accounting team, which is pretty awesome. We just had a question about, is there a mechanism for requiring approval before you send? The only mechanism we have for approval right now, aside from the fact that you can choose very discreetly who has the ability to send purchase orders as well as who has the ability to create them, is you can also choose to have them go into Xero as a draft. And I think we do the same thing for QuickBooks. So anyway, the key thing here is these purchases come in, you can see what's going on them. They're all tidied up. They're all the same details, same tax details. Everything that's there is all there for you to see and use. And of course, it synchronizes then when payments come back into the Accelo side of things. And as I mentioned, the project, when you look at the work that this purchase is for, and zip across now to the project view, you can go to the billing area and we'll show both invoices and purchases here. The purchases will have a little red icon and the invoices will have a little green icon for making money versus losing money, theoretically, and give you the option to be able to see that sort of stuff that's there. I think that's probably all we wanted to cover today in terms of the purchases area. We've got a few questions which I'll actually tackle at the end, just in case folks are real short on time. I wanted to give you a quick look at a bit of a bonus sneak peek. So as you'll probably be aware, we've been working away for a while now on a major upgrade to the way that you're able to view the schedule and the utilization of your colleagues. And what I'm showing here is actually a live screen that we have coming together. And this is able to show, in this case, a series of staff members or users that we have here in Accelo and how busy they are. And you're able to recognize how busy they are based on how dark the cell background colors are. So we can see we've got 7 hours and 22 minutes here for mail-ins spent on Friday the 18th. And in this case, it's actually future time. But we can also go back in time here and look at how busy people were going back into early August, for example. You can see that Malin had a busy day here on the 26th, but had a pretty quiet first couple of days of the month, for example. And so what we're able to do with this new module is give you a screen where you can see a lot of team members and a lot of time all in one place and quickly scan down and see what's missing. And you can also, show or hide weekends, for example. There's lots of power built in there. Now, what I wanted to show you, which isn't live yet, but is coming very soon, is the ability to actually click in on somebody's schedule and see what they were working on, how busy they were. And so we can see Eamon here, for example, had a bit of time that was spent on these calendar entries that are external, a bit of time on committed work, and a bit of time on automatically assigned work. And if I want to drill in and see where those hours come up, and here we've just got some placeholder text for now, I can drill in and actually see the hours that Eamon spent. So you can see he had a scheduled meeting against this project on Monday the 31st for 45 minutes. And we can see, what it was actually 2 different meetings. It wasn't just one meeting. There was a half-hour meeting and then a 15-minute meeting. And I can see when he was working on this next milestone down here, I can see that there was time directly on the milestone, which was 5 minutes of billable time. And I can also see that he then spent more time, which is both billable and scheduled. And this interface is coming along really well. We're hoping to be able to share this with our preview users next week. We'll see that the team are working really hard. So what's happening actually is we're shipping constant updates to this. We're actually running this as a preview. And if you haven't seen it yet, we've actually got a page on our blog which shows all of our users how they can actually get in and play with this new scheduling beta. It's really an open preview that we've never done before, and a great opportunity for anyone who's got a premium version of Accelo and the scheduling module turned on. You can actually just put this magical URL on the end of your address and get in and see it for yourself. Now, of course, if you've got any questions, feel free to email through to support@accelo.com and we'll be able to fill those for you. So that was our little sneak peek of something that's cool and just around the corner. If you've got questions, we'd love to hear them. Feel free to throw them into the Q&A box. Tara, it looks like we've got a few that have been queuing up as we've been going through. So hopefully these make sense out of context. Sorry for making you all wait.
Yeah, so the first one came through from Alex asking, do the purchase orders by default always go into bills in Xero, or do we have to tell the system that?
Now, great question, Alex. We push everything into bills in Xero. We chose not to push them into the purchase order methodology in Xero because it's a little bit kind of overkill and a bit heavy duty. So when you push the purchase from Accelo, you do have the option to create that PDF purchase order, but you've also got the option, but no matter what, we'll push them in as a bill into Xero so that your accounting system's always up to date.
Wonderful. And then Mary asked, how does Accelo handle items brought for stock and then used on the jobs? For example, computer cables, that businesses usually hold a stock of these and buy them in bulk.
Yeah, no, great question. So what you do in that case, Mary, is you would use Xero's inventory system for all of your cables. So you'd actually have, an inventory item called cables, and it could be, 1 meter cable, 3 foot cable, whatever it happens to be. And in Xero, you have the I track this item feature, and that's how you're able to identify the number of those stock items that you have. And then what you're able to do, if you're interested, is you can come in here and look at those particular items and see where the purchases have been made and what the quantities of those purchases are. In Accelo's case, what we do is we allow, let's say you've got a tech who's out on site, if it's a computer cable, for example, they're able to come through into the ticket or the project they're working on here. They're able to just go through into the materials area and say, yeah, I used a bunch of cables. So let's just imagine that, the golf ball equals cable. And let's say they used 8 of them. And so they can just put that information in there and hit save. And then the act of billing the customer for that, as well as purchasing it so that we can show the reduced inventory, the reduced stock on hand, all happens when you create your purchase, and Xero will keep track of that inventory automatically. And you can see that there hasn't been any purchases made of those guys yet. So you can just come into the materials area here and be like, okay, what do we still need to push through as purchase? So we've got accurate stock levels and measuring of what's going on. There's actually another question from Mary that skipped over before. We're talking about adding materials on the fly, which was creating a new item that's not in Xero. And I sort of briefly mentioned that when it comes to items synchronizing in Xero, we do live downstream from those items at the moment. And so you want to create them in Xero, import them from a spreadsheet, whatever that is, for your source, and then you can import them into Accelo. We don't automatically update our price lists or inventory items inside of Accelo. We don't do that like every hour or something like that. And the reason we don't is we don't want to trick people or confuse people with prices changing around when they go to put a quote in. So the act of saying, all right, yep, here's our new details. Here's the new things we sell and the new prices for them that we've just imported into Xero. We then actually have you come into the integration screen in Accelo and trigger a new import, just so nobody gets a nasty surprise.